We talk about everything on this show. We talk about everything we are hearing from our BTM and associates. We talk about what's being reported nationally. We talk about the games, the results. We celebrate for our teams. We cry when we lose. We cover everything college football. 12 months a year, 365 days a year on this channel. We also talk about things that we don't necessarily agree with. We always want to make sure we don't get caught in our own information loop, that we don't get caught in our own silo, to make sure we are reading and hearing other people's thoughts and opinions and intel and information. That's what we're going to do here on episode 25, Peek Around the Corner with your host, Greg Pflugar. Today we're going to be talking about an article written by John Canzano. I hope I'm saying that name correctly, Canzano. He's a well-known person out of Oregon who's been writing about Pac-12 sports and Oregon Duck sports for many years. He has a radio program out there in Portland. And we're going to be talking about the article that he wrote that was published yesterday. We're going to be going through it. It's titled Canzano, Pac-12 Expansion Scenarios Getting Real, and plus, is Big Ten having buyer's remorse? Again, the number one rule on this channel is we have fun talking about college football. The number two rule that we have on this channel is the only person that we can really rip on is me, your host. So I'm not going to sit here and rip on John Canzano's article. Again, we are exploring a different way of thinking, a different information than what we at Peek Around the Corner believe, okay? But we are going to take this piece by piece, and I am going to tell you my true thoughts on this article and why I disagree with pretty much everything that was said in this John Canzano article. Let's start from the beginning. We are going to jump around because there's one part, a lot of parts of this article really jumps out at me. There is one part that just, for me, completely falls flat, which means everything else in this article collapses. This is my opinion. I want you to write down your opinion on this article and John Canzano's takes in the comment section underneath this video. I want you to tell me what you all think, okay? Now, let's get to the article. Canzano, Pac-12 expansion scenarios getting real, plus is Big Ten having buyer's remorse. I'm going to read you the first part, and then we're going to talk about each little part in this first couple paragraphs. I heard a wild story. Maybe you did too. It goes like this. The Big Ten Conference presidents didn't love it when ESPN wasn't part of its announced $1.25 billion a year media rights package. They've grown accustomed to being promoted by the worldwide leader's propaganda machine. The tale goes that presidents were giddy over the windfall created by the New Deal with Fox, NBC, and CBS, but were supposedly left wringing their hands and wondering how not being a partner with ESPN might affect the Big Ten brand. When it comes to rankings, perceptions, and inclusion in the soon-to-be expanded and crazy college football playoff, ESPN controls a big chunk of the narrative. Okay, here's the last part is what I want to talk about first, within the first couple of paragraphs. When it comes to rankings and perception, the inclusion in the soon-to-be expanded playoffs, lucrative college football playoff, ESPN controls a big chunk of the narrative. This is a very pro-ESPN first couple of paragraphs, right? What John Canzano is saying is Big Ten presidents are wringing their hands because ESPN is not going to be part of the new Big Ten package. And there's already a buyer's remorse, according to John Canzano. And this part here where when it comes to rankings, perceptions, inclusion, oh no, ESPN controls a big chunk of that narrative, and Big Ten just lost their connection with ESPN. Actually, ESPN will lose control of the narrative in the soon-to-be expanded college football playoffs. ESPN will have less control than they ever have before in the last 40 years. ESPN is not going to control all the content in the next expanded playoffs media contract. Actually, other media companies are going to be able to bid on the content of the new expanded college football playoffs. This is why Kevin Warren hit the pause button and said no on college football expansion. If you have spent any time following us at Flug Empire, or since we started this channel on August 10th, peek around the corner, you will know that we have reported and said to you all that the number one reason Big Ten hit the pause button and didn't want to do the Greg Sankey college football expansion is because Big Ten wanted to make sure that ESPN did not control all the content to the playoffs. So ESPN is not going to control all the narrative in the expanded college football playoffs. So this last part is just, it isn't true. It actually goes the other way. ESPN controls a big chunk of the narrative, not in the new expanded football playoffs. They will not. Not anywhere close to what they control their narrative now. Now let's go back to the first part of this paragraph. The tale goes that the presidents, Big Ten presidents, were giddy over the windfall created by the new deal with Fox, NBC, and CBS, but were supposedly left wringing their hands and wondering how not being a partner with ESPN might affect the Big Ten brand. Well, let's consider this. Everybody knew, the Big Ten presidents, everybody knew that Kevin Warren wanted exclusive windows with the media partners that he was going to have in this new Big Ten contract. Exclusive windows. In other words, when you turn on a game at noon Eastern time on Fox, it's going to be a Big Ten game. 2:30 and 3:30 Eastern on CBS, it's going to be a Big Ten game. Primetime and NBC, most likely it's going to be a Big Ten game. Exclusive windows. Not only that, but NBC, CBS, and Fox are going to be cross-promoting their games, Big Ten games. Cross-promotion among the networks. These are things that ESPN is not willing to do. They couldn't give Big Ten an exclusive window, and they definitely were not going to cross-promote another game, a game on ESPN2 on Big Ten at 2:30 Eastern time or 3:30 Eastern time. They were not going to promote a Big Ten game on primetime and NBC. ESPN was not willing to do any of this. Big Ten presidents knew this. And by the way, Big Ten is the conference that told, when ESPN gave Big Ten a low ball offer when Jim Delaney was the commissioner in 2006, Jim Delaney could not accept that offer and threatened to form its own conference network to bundle up its third-tier content to get more value out of that content. And ESPN said, go ahead and roll those dice. And Jim Delaney said, consider those dice rolled to ESPN. Big Ten presidents in the Big Ten have known that as the years went on, their ties with ESPN would get less and less. This was not a surprise, shocking development. Nobody is wringing their hands. Big Ten presidents aren't wringing their hands over this incredible deal that's going to offer Big Ten more exposure than ever before. I do not understand this take. That's why we're talking about it. Maybe you all in the comment section, can educate me on these takes by John Casano today. Because again, right, I'm in my bubble here probably, right? Here in the Gopher by the Grace of God studios, I'm probably in my bubble, information bubble. So I'm glad John Casano wrote this article because he believes this information. But please educate me on how Big Ten presidents, after a month of this deal being publicized, are wringing their hands. I can understand the idea, the philosophy that potentially 7 years from now, that the Big Ten presidents come to the conclusion that this was a strategic mistake to not to have ESPN as part of their media deal. I can see that. That's a possibility. But wringing their hands right after this deal was signed, when everybody knew what Kevin Warren was attempting to do and he got it done, I'm not a big believer in, as in the first two paragraphs here, I do not agree with anything that was said. Kazano goes on and says, add four more Pac-12 schools, create a new Big Ten division in the Pacific time zone, shop that to ESPN as part of a new tier of programming. Kazano goes on to say, I've been told and heard that the story in a variety of ways for a couple weeks now. I did some digging around, talked with some consultants, conference insiders, athletic directors, and keep coming back to one thing. It makes almost no sense. Not if you understand the nuances of programming, no media rights negotiations, and trust what ES President Burke Magnus said last week. So this is in lieu of the idea that Big Ten adding four more Pac-12 schools, creating a division in the Pacific time zone, and then Big Ten going with those four schools and that new content and saying to ESPN, would you like to be part of a new tier of programming, that fourth window? Okay? Kazano's basically talking to people and he comes up with the conclusion, this makes no sense. Kazano goes on to say in the article, Magnus talked about Pac-12 expansion, not contraction. He said that he didn't think anyone believed the conference would stay at 10 members. Magnus is negotiating with the conference and spoke about Pac-12 expansion as if it were a foregone conclusion. It caught my attention and it raised the eyebrows of those in the media world. Said one longtime high-level network executive, I think Burke is pretty much honest, or he's much better liar than I am. Okay, well, this is all true. Big Pac-12 should expand. I would expect them to expand, right? If Oregon and Washington doesn't get poached by the Big Ten. That's what Magnus was talking about, the ESPN president. It wasn't that, the Pac-12 is just going to go ahead and expand right now, right away. And they can we'll go through the last part of the article, which in my opinion gets even a little crazier, okay? About the potential candidates in the Big 12. We'll get to that in a second. But Magnus and other people, it's not that yes, I believe the Pac-12 should expand. If the Big Ten doesn't poach, the Pac-12 again, the Pac needs to expand. We have talked about this on Peek Around the Corner. They should get a San Diego State. They should get an MSU. That's what we think. That's our take on it. Again, write your take on it in the comment section below the video. But what Kazano isn't filling in on here in these couple paragraphs, he's not saying if the Pac-12 doesn't get poached, he's just saying they should expand. Oregon and Washington, they're not going to be for any expansion right now for the Pac-12 until they play out this process of them talking to the Big Ten talking to potential new media partners to see if they can get enough value to bring on Oregon and Washington and then potentially Stanford and another school. Again, Kazano's, in my opinion, is leaving out a big part of what Magnus said. This was about if the Pac-12 doesn't get poached by the Big Ten again, that this could happen. He goes on to say, why might the Big Ten presidents be anxious about the loss of ESPN as a partner? We all know the power of ESPN's platform, college football game days, a Saturday morning machine, distributing national narratives and skewing the day's conversation. Having that element on your side is a massive benefit. The SEC knows what I'm talking about. Okay, I'm going to go on before I make a comment about that. I asked Bob Thompson, the former president of Fox Sports Networks, what he made of the story that has been circulating for a couple weeks. Is it possible the Big Ten presidents had buyer's remorse and now want ESPN as a partner? He said, Bob Thompson, as long as the negotiations took, I find it hard to believe that the university presidents didn't know that ESPN wasn't going to be involved prior to the announcement. If they had problems with that, then they certainly would have been brought up at that point. This was a huge decision for the conference going forward, and not one that would have been made without the presidents being made aware of all the particulars. So basically, Bob Thompson is saying, no, they do not have buyer's remorse. They do not have anxiety over this decision. This was a long process. This process kept getting, the final announcement of the Big Ten media contract kept getting delayed and pushed back because they were in talks with UCLA and USC. By the way, those talks, the media out west never picked up on it, that this was happening. They've been behind the story the whole time. And talking about being behind the story, again, let me go back to what Casano says here. Why might the Big Ten presidents be anxious about the loss of ESPN as a partner? We all know the power of ESPN's platform, college football game days, a Saturday morning machine. Having the element of ESPN on your side is a massive benefit. The SEC knows what I'm talking about. Look, that's all been true. But again, the world is changing. Fox is becoming Fox has never had better ratings than they had last year for their football content. Never had better ratings than last year. Other networks are becoming involved in Big Ten content. NBC is becoming more a part of Big Ten football. The football playoffs, the expanded college football playoffs that will be happening after 2026 will have more than just one media company providing the content, talking about college football playoffs. ESPN's power is still great and will be great going forward, but it's going to become less and less, not more and more. This to me, this article should have been written in 2011, not 2022. That's my biggest take on this article. This, to me, what I would call a horse and buggy article. It's talking about the past. It's not talking about the future. And Kevin Warren, the Big Ten presidents and the Pac-12 presidents and everyone else is looking at the future. Okay. Going forward. Here's another one. John Casano continues to say, would the new tier programming be appealing to ESPN? This is about Big Ten establishing like a fourth window, those late night games. He goes on to say, we've heard about it for weeks. The Big Ten could use Oregon, Washington, Stanford, and Cal to create a package of another 30 games that included those 4 new Pac-12 schools, plus USC and UCLA. But Thompson tells me, it would seem to me that Fox, CBS, and NBC would want those games to go into the selection pool as well. Casano continues to say that does ESPN no good at all. Because instead of having the Pacific time zone primetime window to itself, which it could easily have by partnering with Pac-12, the network would now be competing against the Big Ten's primary partners, Fox, CBS, and NBC for the games. I mean, wouldn't you want to select Oregon versus Washington over Northwestern versus Maryland, Thompson said. Okay, yes. You would want to select Oregon versus Washington over Northwestern versus Maryland, everything being even. We all can agree with that. I'm not taking a shot at Northwestern Maryland here. We all agree Oregon and Washington, anyone would select that over Northwestern Maryland. But that's not the context. Big Ten country watches Big Ten football. Pac-12 country, unfortunately, doesn't watch Pac-12 football. I'm not sitting here taking shots at Pac-12 universities or the fan bases. It's just the numbers show it every single year for decades. Big Ten football, Big Ten country watches Big Ten football. Oregon, it's not about Oregon versus Washington versus Northwestern versus Maryland. It's about Oregon versus Washington in Pac-12 versus Oregon and Washington in the Big Ten. It's about Oregon versus Purdue versus Oregon State. Right? The value of the Oregon-Washington game gets elevated if it's being played in Big Ten. Is it enough value for ESPN or some other media company like Amazon and Apple to pay enough money to that content for Big Ten to add on those schools, Oregon and Washington, and then potentially Stanford in a fourth school? We think so, yes. Casano and others think so, no. But just to compare Oregon versus Washington versus Northwestern against Maryland misses the story of all this. It just does, in my opinion. Okay, there's other stuff here. I don't know. I'm just going to skip over it. We'll get to the end. You can read the article. It was John Casano yesterday. So Casano's talking about Pac-12 potential candidates for expansion. He talks about the possibility of Pac-12 getting in a relationship with the SEC, doing a scheduling relationship. He's talking about possibly the Pac-12 going to 8 conference games. I don't understand that either. But let's just get to the candidates of potential Pac-12 expansion candidates. San Diego State. Casano goes on to say it's the most obvious choice, the one that I think Pac-12 would be wise to explore. San Diego State brings a DMA of 1.1 million television households. We did an episode on this on Peek Around the Corner. That if the Pac-12 doesn't get poached again by the Big Ten, and we think they will, but if they do not, San Diego State is a must-add. So this is part of the article that we agree with John Casano. San Diego State is the top choice. They would need to expand with them. You cannot let Southern California go, and you do not want Big 12 poaching taking San Diego State. So yes, we agree with John on that. He has SMU as the next expansion. He puts odds on this. San Diego State 2-1. I'd put them at 1-9. I think they're way better odds than 2-1. SMU 4-1. Again, he goes on to talk about the footprint in Dallas. SMU is going to be, they have a huge NIL, name, image, and likeness support from their boosters. SMU, for me, is also an obvious expansion target. Those are the top two. UNLV, Boise State, Fresno State. He goes on to talk about each one of those schools as being the candidate. Then he talks about Big 12 hunting. John Casano believes, okay, let me just read it for you. Pac-12 Commissioner George Kliavkoff said on Media Day last month that he hadn't decided if he was going to shopping in the Big 12 yet. Okay. Then John Casano goes on to talk about the Big 12 bylaws, which potentially penalizes the party members to the tune of $76 million, but there's a tricky workaround there. There is no workaround. I'm not going to get into the Big 12 bylaws. There's a whole lot of other people on Twitter who've explained it very well, that this information isn't quite correct that Casano's saying. They can't simply have dissolution in the Big 12 conference. I'm not going to get in the deep weeds on that, but this to me is also inaccurate in this article. He goes on to say, if the Pac-12 poached Oklahoma State, Baylor, Texas Tech, TCU, Kansas, and Kansas State, the Big 12 would disband. He does say, I don't think this is going to happen, in part because I don't believe ESPN wants to further disrupt the teaching ecosystem. Also because I don't think the Pac-12 would necessarily want all those schools. So the two reasons that John Casano says that the Pac-12 won't poach all these Big 12 schools is that ESPN doesn't want to, disrupt the ecosystem, which ESPN's been doing anyways. And number two, I don't think the Pac-12 would want all those schools. Neither of those are the reasons why the Pac-12 won't poach those schools, because those schools don't want to go to the Pac-12. Why would any of those schools want to go to the Pac-12 right now, at this point in time in history? Why would Oklahoma State, Baylor, Texas Tech, TCU, Kansas, and Kansas State go to the Pac-12? The Pac-12 is full of instability. Maybe if they see that the Big Ten doesn't poach the Pac-12 again, maybe if those schools see the Pac-12's new media contract is finalized and that there's carve-outs for potential more expansion from what every media company decides to deal with the Pac-12, maybe ESPN. None of those schools are interested in joining the Big 12 right now. Joining the PAC right now. Not Oklahoma State, not Baylor, Texas Tech, TCU, Kansas, Kansas State. Again, I have a big disagreement with a large part of this article. Still, I'm throwing this out there because one Pac-12 AD, this is going back to the article, told me he's in favor of chasing a number of current and Big 12 teams versus adding a bunch of Mountain West Conference candidates that dilute the value of the Pac-12. Oklahoma State is the top of my list, he said. Odds 10-1. Oklahoma State's 10-1. It's more like 2,000-1. I don't. And then he finishes off the article. Biggest question: how difficult would it be to get 6 Big 12 schools to simultaneously jump? Who else makes the sense for Pac-12? I'll address it in the coming week. How difficult would it be to get 6 big? Impossible. None of those schools are looking to jump to the Pac-12. So again, I'm glad he wrote this article because he believes it, obviously. John Casano has got his sources telling him all this. He's got Pac-12 athletic directors telling him all this. I do think what hinders this article and this take, from my opinion, is that it's horse and buggy. It's an article that should have been written in 2011. This isn't the reality of today's world. The Pac-12 isn't perceived as it was before. The ratings are low. The consumers do not watch Pac-12 football in Pac-12 country. Oklahoma State, at this point in time, wouldn't want to travel west for all those games to not be watched, to not have exposure. Big Ten presidents are not wringing their hands over this new Big Ten deal. Okay? So I'm glad this article was written. Not everyone's going to agree with Peek Around the Corner. Not everyone's going to agree with you all. On this channel, we have to make sure we explore what everyone is thinking, what everyone is saying, what everyone's reporting on. We want to make sure we get the full picture, because that's what we do here at Peek Around the Corner. We talk everything college football. If you like this content, please hit the like button. Please share the video and subscribe to this channel. We're marching towards 1,000 subscriptions. We appreciate your support. And again, until next time, all of us at Peek Around the Corner, to all of you, please, you all take care of each other. Thank you so very much.